Hello. For just 5 cents a day, did you know that you can help provide more historical content for this beautiful African man right here? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Micah. This is Winston. You guys are rocking with us on Micah's Intellectual Corner. On today's episode, we're diving back into some Sabaton history. This is Screaming Eagles Battle of the Bulge. Since we already did the official music video, we decided to go ahead and do this one. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right into it. So let's roll.
From Sabaton.
And I'm Freddie Mercury.
And this is Sabaton History. Screaming Eagles. You know, eagles don't actually scream. It's more like a ah.
And our song, Screaming Eagles, is about the 101st Airborne at the Battle of the Bulge.
And if you guys haven't checked out that one, definitely check out my my video on my reaction to the Battle of the Bulge to their actual song, because it's definitely a good one. Yeah.
I am aware that people call them the 101st, but in terms of flow for an oral narrative, I'm going to call them the 101st, just so I can tell the story more smoothly. Spirits were high among the common German soldiers as they passed lines of tanks, shells, and ammunition on their way to the front lines in France and Belgium in the early December days of 1944. It had been a disastrous year for the Wehrmacht, suffering defeat after defeat on all fronts. But suddenly, there was this big army assembling in the West, ready to go on the offensive once again, with no lesser aim but to tear apart the Allied coalition in the West in one decisive thrust. It felt like 1940 all over again. However...
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, if you don't know, Hitler pretty much was trying to blitzkrieg through the Ardennes forests again, since that was the least fortified position in between France, Belgium, and Germany. So he was trying to do that again because obviously it worked in 1940, but he has nowhere near the manpower, the equipment needed, and like, let's not even get started on the actual oil needed for this equipment. So they're just doing it from the
This
start.
was not the German army that had been sent on the offensive in Poland, France, or Russia 4 or 5 years before. By the early winter of 1944, Germany's military consisted partly of battle-hardened veterans and partly of young boys and old men that had been pressed into the now struggling war machine. The Reich was scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of conscription and logistics. Supply had always been a weakness of the German army, but in 1944, it clearly, seriously lacked adequate motorization, fuel, and ammunition to support an endeavor like this new Western one. The armored wedge of the offensive was an amalgamation of different models, as was the artillery. Some Panthers and Jagdpanzer, but mostly Panzer IVs and modified half-tracks. But the Panzer Grenadiers rode on the tanks. The paratroopers were reinforced by young men from the Luftwaffe personnel, and the Volksgrenadiers were made of shattered divisions. So despite the impressive numbers, the army...
Yeah, so if anything, as we can tell, this entire force out west was pretty much the Germany's, back, or what they had in their rear D, or back in the back, who didn't go for the major deployment out east, pretty much because everything that they really need is out east, and probably really right now at this stage of the war, southeast near Stalingrad and all that stuff, that they're trying to get more oil and all that. But well, actually, I'm stupid. By this time, all of their freaking stuff is actually either captured or something else by Soviet soldiers and troops and stuff like that. But yeah,
seemed to lack the capability of fulfilling Adolf Hitler's vision for destroying his enemies. As the attack finally began on December 16th, it did fail to achieve its objectives rather quickly. The 6th Panzer Army, which was supposed to lead the main attack, had been held up by stubborn American resistance at Saint-Vit, Malmedy, and Elsenborn Ridge. Even though the main thrust had failed, though, the supporting 5th Panzer Army had managed to achieve considerable success further south, as it had found a weak spot in the American lines in the Ardennes. Plans shifted on the spot. 5th Army would advance all the way to the River Meuse, taking the town of Bastogne in the process. Bastogne was not only a major traffic hub, but also a depot for Allied fuel, storing nearly 3 million gallons. A precious resource to the Germans if captured, sure, but even if destroyed, it would sabotage plans for an American offensive in the coming spring. If Bastogne were taken quickly, there might still be a chance to further advance beyond the Meuse and towards Namur.
Yeah, so now obviously it makes a little bit more sense why they're going for the, the huge offensive and, creating that huge bulge and trying to capture that city because they needed the resources. I mean, 3 million gallons of fuel isn't nothing to just scoff at, but I mean, obviously, most likely in a war like this, it's probably just going to get gobbled up really freaking fast, which is kind of sad to say, but yeah.
Before the offensive, the area around Bastogne was considered a pretty quiet sector of the front by American High Command. It lay in between the operational sector of the First Army, which had been slogging through the Hütgen forest, and the Third Army south of Luxembourg, which was grinding against the German fortifications of the Siegfried Line. So the Ardennes had been seen as a resting zone for battered divisions, or a training ground for green units who needed to gain some experience from the small skirmishes that did take place there. To attack Bastogne, though, the Germans would have to send a large armored force through the thickly wooded Ardennes, with only a few roads available. Such a maneuver was considered extremely unlikely by the Allies, especially in the winter. I mean, a surprise attack through the Ardennes? Who could have predicted that? Sure, that was exactly what the Germans did in 1940, but not again, right? So, the Ardennes sector was only thinly held by 3 American divisions when the armored spearhead of the Germans appeared on the scene. Overrunning American lines, elements of the 5th Panzer Army then rushed in to exploit the break in those lines. They knew they had only a small window of time of maybe 4 or 5 days until the Allies would send in reinforcements. The Americans in the Ardennes had no hope of halting the German advance, but could at least try to blunt the spearhead and deprive the Germans of precious time. So in a fighting retreat, they delayed the Germans with anti-tank guns and bazookas, causing traffic jams.
Yeah, because I mean, in reality, all they really do need to do is just hold out for like a good day or two, and they should be good. Because I mean, a good day or two, and I mean, historically, I mean, it's obviously not super historically, but in this war, historically, when it comes to their blitzkrieg, if they go too hard in it, their infantry always needs time to, catch up with their tanks and stuff like that. So, what I'm saying? So it might be like literally all you need is like a day or two, and I feel like, obviously that's probably what happened.
By taking out the lead tanks on the narrow forest roads. Lieutenant General Omar Bradley, in overall command of the sector, had been promised big reinforcements, but they would take time. The only immediately available forces in the vicinity were the 82nd and the 101st Airborne Divisions, currently being refitted at Rheims after their costly attacks during Operation Market Garden. While the 82nd was sent north towards Saint-Vite, the 101st, Screaming Eagles, were rushed towards Bastogne. The 101st was an experienced and battle-proven unit, but it did not have adequate winter equipment, and not really enough heavy weapons available either.
Yeah, because I mean, the 101st and 82nd are both like super light assault units, so like they're not meant to have anything, like literally anything heavy. Even the artillery is like the super lightest artillery is 105 millimeters, like it's super tiny, like, what I'm saying? Everything about the unit is tiny, so that they can hurry up and deploy super fast, and airborne missions, so like we see, or like we saw in World War II and stuff like that. So that makes sense.
Anyhow, after 2 days of fighting the German advance in the Ardennes, the American retreat had become total, and the troops flooded back towards Bastogne, away from the German panzers. The roads to Bastogne were open, but the weather worsened. This was bad for the Americans, as rain and fog grounded the American Air Force. But at Bastogne, the men prepared their defenses. Field artillery and M7 self-propelled howitzers dug in on a semicircular perimeter, while engineers turned the town into a fortress. the 19th, panzers appeared on the outskirts of town, and those American tanks that were available rode out to meet them, delaying the German advance once again. That night, the Screaming Eagles finally arrived in Bastogne. So too did the elite German Panzerlehr Division. The next day, the Screaming Eagles were smack in the center of the action. While the German tanks and tank destroyers attacked and destroyed the retreating or bogged down American army units just outside Bastogne, the 101st engaged the German infantry. Supported by field artillery, the Screaming Eagles fought through the outskirts and local villages and even barricaded themselves inside an old chateau, shooting down the Panzer Grenadiers who tried to flush them out. This stiff resistance cost the Germans even more time, and it was not until the 22nd that Bastogne was finally surrounded. Hitler gave the order, Bastogne must be taken at all cost. On that day, two blindfolded officers of the Panzerlehr approached the headquarters of General McAuliffe, in overall command of the various troops trapped inside the city. The two officers asked the Americans to surrender. Confronted by the offer, McAuliffe blurted out laughing, "Nuts." Bastogne was encircled, true, but for days now the Germans had tried unsuccessfully to break in and had been repelled time and again.
Yeah, and again, he knew for a fact that all he needed was a couple of days to hold out, not even, and he would have a huge swarm of reinforcements coming in to help him, drive them back. So, and not to mention, if he can hold on, that's a huge record on his, or a huge, medal on his record, pretty much, like from doing that, like. Not to mention, obviously he probably knew he was going to get some notoriety and every type of other things for that. So, rather him just, say, okay, yeah, I give up, and him fade into obscurity, like,
Let's face it, being encircled was basically part of the job description of the 101st Airborne. Lost for adequate words, McAuliffe also just typed out.
Yeah, and that's true too. Like, for airborne units, their whole, their whole purpose is to be, freaking surrounded. Like they get dropped in behind enemy line. So again, I guess being surrounded meant literally nothing.
Nuts on the document. To the puzzled Germans who asked, what was this supposed to mean? The Americans simply explained that they should go to hell and that every German trying to get into the town was about to be killed. So the German forces built up again, reinforced by more veteran Panzer Grenadiers from Italy and more tanks and tank destroyers. But the skies cleared, and the American Air Force was able to resupply the encircled city. The 101st had dug in on Christmas Day in the woods northeast of the city. Digging into the frozen ground in the woods was difficult, but every foxhole was a lifesaver as the German shells dropped all around them. In the freezing cold, the German grenadiers infiltrating the woods in white camouflage were met with rifle and machine gun fire, and the advancing panzers were engaged with bazookas and howitzers. Wave after wave, the Germans advanced on the 101st from different directions, but time and time again, the paratroopers and glider infantry fought them off in a series of vicious battles through woods and villages. Specialized tree buster shells were soon falling on the German positions, savaging the attackers with splinters and shrapnel. Christmas attack was an absolute disaster for the Germans, with heavy casualties and the loss of a lot of tanks.
Yeah, and this entire freaking battle went down like this for the first brigade in 101st. That was first brigade in the 101st, and for us in first brigade, that was such a huge moment in history that the brigade ended up changing its name to Bastogne. Like I'm pretty sure I said in the other video that I did, but yeah, they ended up changing their name to Bastogne and all that stuff. Like this was a very big moment in the division's history.
The siege continued, but the major threat had been fought off. By the 26th, the reserves from Patton's Third Army finally established a corridor into Bastogne, though it would take several more days to secure it since the Germans were trying to cut it off. Skirmishes continued, but even newly arrived SS divisions could not establish another siege. By January, fearing that they might lose overall control of the front, German High Command ordered a full retreat, and the overall strategic initiative in the West shifted to the Americans. By now, the U.S. Air Force was flying attacks again, and on January 12th, when the news of a Soviet winter offensive broke, so too did Hitler's last gamble in the West.
Yeah, like I said, at the end of the day, it was very obvious that he just wanted the entire town for the 3 million gallons of oil, or not even oil, I'm pretty sure it was just gas, which, again, he could use, but at the end of the day, he really needed that more oil than anything, because, you know what I'm saying, like, again, we have to remember, this war was the very first war where oil really came into play, you know what I'm saying, like, the World War I was mainly just coal and steam and stuff like that. And even though this was the first major oil war, oil was like people like oil refinery and all that stuff was still in its infancy. Like if I'm not mistaken, the United States was the major oil producer, followed by the USSR. You know what I'm saying? Like the Middle East was like nobody knew. Like it was super infancy in the Middle East. So like it's just kind of crazy to think about. Like I'm pretty sure that's why you know Stalingrad and all that other stuff happened, because they were trying to get the oil in the Caucasus and all that stuff. But just crazy to think about.
101st Airborne. What about them?
Well, 101st Airborne, we visited them at Fort Campbell, and I just want to say to anyone who was there and to anyone in the 101st and at Fort Campbell, thank you for taking such a good...
That would have been so freaking cool. Like I wish I would have known when they went there. Like that would have been so cool, because obviously it was a free show. Like that would have been like, damn. Because I'm not gonna lie, like I've been to a couple of free shows, but they're usually country shows, which like nothing against country. Like I like a couple of country songs, but for the most part, you know what I'm saying? It's like yeah. So, but this would have been like pretty amazing to see though. But it is what it is.
Care of us.
Did you go to Bastogne as well?
Yes, I did. We saw the lovely Sherman tank they have on the town square.
I haven't been there. I've never
You
been
haven't?
there. No.
Oh, I recommend it. The forest outside of Bastogne, where they, you know, all of that crazy stuff from, you know, Band of Brothers. You can see in there.
Tell us about the actual song itself. How did this?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Band of Brothers was from 4th Brigade, and Bastogne is, or Battle of Bulge is 1st Brigade, if I'm not mistaken.
This come up?
Actually, a bit different this one. I was sitting very much alone in the old studio, and I was writing the music. And I didn't even have any idea what the song was going to be about at this time. To be honest, I might be destroying somebody's illusion of the songwriting process here. But I was so fucking angry and tired with myself, because I've been writing a lot on the Coat of Arms album, and I just hadn't gotten that punchy, really hard, adrenaline rushing song yet. Probably about 1 or 2 in the morning, I just said, fuck this shit. I'm gonna write a song and I'm not going home until I did. And in that case, that aggression I had towards myself actually just kickstarted that intro, and which became kind of the chorus as well. Like, making the guitar riff, and it's like, yeah, that's it, let's go, next. Cool. So I just didn't give myself any chance to slow down and overthink it. So it just went like a train from beginning to end. And by 7 or 8 in the morning, it was all done. So it's actually one of the faster Sabaton songs ever written, you know, from a songwriting perspective.
And the neighbors called and said they were really happy?
Yes, they loved it.
Enjoyed the entire songwriting process. They thought, wow.
Can't wait to hear your new album, man.
Keep working at night, man. That's the thing. But hey, something you said before I want to get back to. You mentioned Band of Brothers.
Yes.
I love Band of Brothers.
So do I. It might seem obvious to a lot of people who are into history that, you know, everybody has seen that. But yes.
Well, they might not know that Band of Brothers is about these guys.
Yes. Oh, sorry. It is about the 101st Airborne, and there's a fantastic book called Band of Brothers, written by Stephen Ambrose, if I'm not...
Yeah, but sadly, if I'm not... Well, if I already know I'm not mistaken, because I was there when it happened, but the brigade, the 4th Brigade, where the Band of Brothers were with, or no longer, because I'm pretty sure, like, every 4th Brigade in the entire Army just disbanded for some reason, so every division has, like, only 3 brigades or something like that, but... Yeah, their whole brigade just got disbanded, and all their men got scattered throughout all the other 3 freaking brigades. It was kind of shitty when it happened, because they were really annoying. Like, but yeah.
But Band of Brothers itself, the series you were saying about.
It's almost 20 years old now, and this is something I guess if you are under 25 or maybe under 30, you might have missed out on.
You shouldn't miss Band of Brothers. You guys, how awesome is Band of Brothers?
Awesome!
And they're not saying that because they have to, because we could always cut it out and add some screams in there.
Yeah, we got to add some extra screams because they didn't sound enthusiastic enough.
Yeah, we want people to think we have a really big crew as well. Isn't that right, Sergey, George, Geraldo? No, but seriously, Band of Brothers is absolutely amazing. It's if you want to get an idea of not just the fighting part of war, but every aspect of what goes through a soldier's life, you owe it to yourself to check out Band of Brothers.
Yeah, perfect marriage between documentary and Hollywood movie always. It's a 10 1-hour, TV series.
Yeah, I haven't done. They also did The Pacific, which I have not seen yet. The Pacific. What? No, I have not seen.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, the first time around I watched it, I didn't think it was as good as Band of Brothers. But the second time I watched The Pacific, I actually think I liked it even more.
All right, well, that is it for Screaming Eagles.
And that's it for today.
I'm going to hell.
All right, everyone, remember to check us out on Patreon. Check those videos, Time Ghost, and World War II. Don't forget that. And also, see you next time.
Alright guys, I'll go ahead and end it right there. So yeah, just another great video. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, like I was saying before, whenever they did disband, like whenever their guys came over, first of all, a whole bunch of their guys were outranked a whole bunch of our guys. So a whole bunch of our guys were just privates. But then they always just, they had this whole freaking, attitude with them, because I guess the whole Band of Brothers thing is, who cares? Who cares? But in case so, thank you guys again for joining me on another episode of Mike's Insulation Corner. If you like this one, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, say peace out to Wednesday. I'll see you guys about. See you. I'm out. Peace.